My name is Stacia Ryder, and I just want to say thank you for coming today to this webinar on energy inequality. I'll say just a few words, and then I'll introduce our first panelist for the day. So I'm sure many of you know, but for those who don't, energy inequality has to do with disparities in energy access and use. And these patterns of inequality are often tied to other patterns of inequality, particularly along the lines of income, gender, and race. And we do actually often see energy inequality rates that are worse than income inequality rates. So this is a really important issue, and it's important globally, but also locally, as we'll be talking about mostly today. So we see that energy inequality in the UK varies by regions, and the Southwest has the second highest rate of energy inequality and fuel poverty. And there are different problems, which we'll talk about today when it comes to rural versus urban energy inequalities and issues with energy access. And so today we have three panelists that will be talking about energy inequality in Exeter and Devon. And so just before I introduce the first panelist, just a quick reminder that if you could please keep your microphones off when you're not speaking, that always helps with sound quality. And if you have questions, you can either put them in the chat or raise your hand, your virtual hand or your regular hand if your video is on. Also a reminder, if you didn't get the notification when you entered, that we are recording this event. So just please keep that in mind. And so we'll take questions a few different ways. After each panelist, we'll have time for some questions directly about what they are speaking to, and then we'll have some time at the end for more general questions and discussion. So with that, I'm going to introduce our first panelist, which is Lucy Betts. And Lucy is a project development coordinator for National Energy Action based in Devon. And she advises clients on a multitude of topics, including information on simple changes that you can make to save on energy costs. And she deals with energy debt grants for insulation or heating, switching energy suppliers, and signposting to information on renewable technologies. So Lucy, I will turn it over to you. Thanks.
Hello there, can everybody hear me?
Yes.
I'm afraid I can't share my screen because, oh, here we go. That's great, thank you. Okay, I'm glad that you can hear me. So National Energy Action focuses a lot on fuel poverty. In the last 10 years, the definition of fuel poverty has changed twice before, and recently has changed again. And its relation to the fuel poverty strategy. In England, we're now following the Lilly framework, which a household is classed as fuel poor if the household's fuel poverty energy efficiency rating is band D or below, and their disposable income after housing and fuel costs is below the poverty line. In 2019, these are the latest stats that we've got. Fuel poverty is affecting 13.4% of households in England, and the average gap, which means the gap which you have to cross before they stop being in fuel poverty, is £216 on fuel costs. Average gap is a reduction in required fuel bill that average fuel poor households need in order not to be classed as fuel poor. The aggregate gap is the combination of all of those. NEA, who we are, we're there to influence and increase strategic actions against fuel poverty, to develop and progress solutions to improve access to energy efficient products, advice and fuel poverty related services, and to enhance knowledge and understanding of energy efficiency and fuel poverty. The gaps are impacted by the risk factors And the risk factors for the individual are for fuel poverty are low income, high fuel costs, fuel payment methods, unemployed people, people aged 16 to 25, older people, and people with medical conditions. There's also the issue of the property, the age, size, whether it's poorly insulated, solid walls, inefficient heating systems, whether somebody's off gas, and the tenure. We're seeing that private rental sectors increasing, and we're seeing, and which is borne out by the stats, is that those in private sector are far more likely to be fuel poor. These are the latest stats that were released in March regards fuel poverty. The poorest area, or the area of highest fuel poverty, is in the West Midlands. However, the area of the highest or the largest gap is in the Southwest, and that is related to the median, the fuel median. It also stated that those living in urban areas are more likely to be in fuel poverty, but those in rural households have the largest fuel poverty gap. Well, we recognise in Devon that we've got a high level of rural housing, and also that there's also borne out in the stats as stated, the fuel. Those people who are off gas are much more likely to be in fuel poverty, and we have got higher levels of people in our area who are off the gas grid. And I looked up, I don't know if you know of the non-gas map, but it's quite useful to have a look at. And this is Mid-Devon's statistics, for instance. And non-gas properties are higher than the average of 51.7%, and fuel poverty is at 12.8%. It's not always the case that that areas that are high levels of non-gas have got high levels of fuel poverty, but for instance, like in Exeter, there's areas that have got low levels of being on the gas network, but they're actually they've got high levels of income, so they're not it's not an area of high levels of fuel poverty, but it can be a good indicator when we're looking. I was asked to look at what impacts on the ability to access affordable energy to those on low incomes. Well, a biggest issue, particularly during COVID, was lack of access to computers, which meant reduced ability to tariff compare. It's also made it very complicated to access your benefit accounts and any online accounts for the energy providers. We've noticed very long call waiting times, issues with suppliers, greater emphasis of doing everything online, which is great, but a lot of our clients that I've worked with who are fuel poor tend not to have access to the internet or limited understanding of how to use the internet and access their online accounts. There's a much greater chance when you're on a low income of being on a prepayment meter, which also reduces your options when it comes to cheaper deals. Not all suppliers have the warm discount, which a lot of our clients aren't aware of and don't even know what the warm home discount is, which which would provide those on the core group and the broader group with a £140 discount. The core group will automatically get that warm home discount, but the clients that we deal with who might be able to access the broader group because they're on a low income quite regularly don't know of that discount. There's a greater proportion of people living in the private rental sector, as we talked about, and there's quite a large proportion of those. That sector is definitely growing. Also, when you're on a low income, you're likely to have very inefficient white goods, light bulbs, etc. I and Tara will often look at that issue, and whenever there's a grant available or there is some schemes where you can update your white goods, that can be a really good way of reducing your bills. The big issue that I find in the work I do is being in debt already and not being able to change. The Ofgem guidance is basically if you've got over £500 on your gas or electric, you're not going to be able to change. There's a vulnerability to our clients because they often are at home to cold calling, although that hasn't been such an issue during the COVID crisis. We're expecting that to be an issue again. And we've particularly found that problematic with those with cognitive disabilities or mental health issues, where they might be more vulnerable to people doorstepping, pressurising them to change to more expensive tariffs. And a big issue can be for clients is not knowing where to get the advice, and that can be on issues such as getting the cheapest deal, or a lot of the time it's like improving what they've got within their properties. So, you know, if they're homeowners and need a new heating system, they just don't think they can afford it and don't realise they might get grants to improve that. I spend a lot of my time addressing these gaps with warm home discount, as I talked about. People can access the winter fuel payment if they're eligible, the cold weather payment. Benefits checks is critical because a lot of people are not getting, or certainly in the work I've done, their optimum level of benefit entitlement. If you haven't got enough money coming in, it's very difficult to deal with what's going out. And I work again with reducing costs as tariff comparison, bill payment, behaviour advice, all of which are very important. I've covered the issue of warm home discount, that not all suppliers provide it. This is an old list, by the way, so some of these might not still be around, but it does indicate that there's quite a few suppliers that don't do warm home discount. Additional support is there for clients, so such as the priority service register, which can be really critical when it comes to not being given an option of, or not being pushed towards an option of prepayment meters. Trust and grants are available for helping people when they've got debt issues. We always advise people to go to an energy advice agency like ourselves, or Eco, or 361 in North Devon. Get some good advice if you're not sure, but also where you've got problems with your supplier, you can use the Citizen Advice Consumer Service. If people have got debts and multiple debts, particularly, we'd recommend they go to FCA, Regulated Money Advice and Debt Support, and Turn to Us is a really good website to use for benefits checks, for grant finders, for also finding advice agencies. Here are two really good briefing papers. When the strategy came out this year, National Energy Action had provided their own briefing, so this is a link to that. There's also a really good fact sheet about fuel poverty that Bays came up with, and it's got some really good points on that, and it's only 2 pages long, so I think it's quite useful. And that was it. That's all I was going to say.
Thank you, Lucy. That was really, really interesting, and had a lot of information in a very short time. I'm very impressed.
Sorry if I went a bit fast.
No. So I don't see any questions in the chat. Does anybody? Okay,
Megan has one.
Megan. Yeah. Go ahead, Megan.
You can unmute yourself.
Yeah, it's only a very quick one. It's just to say, will this presentation and other future presentations today be sent round to us? Is that possible? Because there's a lot of interesting information on there that I didn't have time to write it all down. Thank you.
We'll certainly be recording it. Lucy, are you happy to share the presentation?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, that'd be great. Thank you very much. Very, very interesting. Thank you.
I wonder, Lucy, whether you might put those last couple of links in the chat that you showed.
Yeah, that would be great. I think they're really good for just the most up-to-date stats for fuel poverty in the southwest, particularly, and also things are definitely on the change with fuel poverty. The one thing I would say about the stats that are there at the moment is they're planning for fuel poverty based on stats up to 2019. My perception is things have got a lot worse. In the last 10 years, fuel poverty has by the stats looked like it's reducing since 2010, but in relation to last year, I can just say from my personal experience as a fuel poverty advisor, energy advisor, is that my work has got a lot. The services I've worked for have been a lot more busy. We've seen multiple debt issues, and the calls tend to be debt, whereas before we might have been providing advice over a variety of subjects, and that services have been incredibly busy, and waiting lists have been very high for a lot of organisations. It's starting to quieten down now for the summer. So my only concern at the moment is statistics that we're using at the moment are the 2019 ones. We haven't got those updated statistics yet for last year. And I think we might see a big change in, we've certainly seen a lot higher levels of debt and a lot more issues in trying to address those debt issues with the energy companies. We haven't seen, I think many organisations have been talking about a tsunami of problems that people are facing, particularly now furlough is ending. But we haven't got the stats at the moment to back that up. So that is just worth pointing out. I use the stats because I think they're the most up-to-date ones, and it did look kind of positive, that things were going in the right direction. But my perception is now that things have changed radically, and I know that the COVID-19 was part of this as well.
Thanks, Lucy. I think you're right. This is something that, as data emerges over these last couple of years, I agree, we're really going to, I would expect we'll see some really different data than we've seen previously. Tara, I think you have your hand up if you want to go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to comment on the stats actually, that for Devon, actually, it was quite a big jump from the previous year. The previous year, we were only at about 10.7% fuel poverty. So that was quite a massive leap to the 2019 statistics. And I don't really know why that jumped so high. I wonder if Lucy might know whether there was a change in the way that it was calculated at government level, perhaps, because that seemed a really massive jump of almost 3% increase for Devon in 1 year. You're on mute, Lucy.
I've hit the video rather than come off mute. They've changed the way that they've defined fuel poverty. So that's definitely swayed it. Unless you can see, I mean, they were saying that they believe that for nationally it's reduced, but if you look at the overall figure, it looks higher than it did the year before. So if you wanted any more information about that, we've got a really good research team at NEA, and one of the things I should have said is that there's 3 parts to my organisation. I'm the energy advice side, we've got a research side who collate all these stats, and we've got a campaigning political side that promotes. So if anybody does want any more detailed information, they're always very welcome to come back to me, and I will forward them to the right person in my organisation. NEA is a national organisation with many parts, but yes, I do think it's because of the way that they've been calculated. I can't see that Devon, it's very difficult to see why Devon would have increased and everywhere else has gone down. However, I expect 2020 to have an increase. I really do, and I think, would you say the same, Tara? Would you, in your experience? Yeah,
I was only looking at some statistics earlier with a partner, and we were looking at the numbers of people we helped this last winter, and it was more people than we'd helped the previous winter, which you kind of expect, but we weren't out in the community. So what would the numbers have been like if we'd been out in the community doing all of our normal community engagement work? I think our numbers would have been through the roof. So, our numbers were higher and we were sat behind a desk all winter. So
every single case I've got or had recently has been debt, which I've, it's hard work for advisors. I mean, I know that we might go into that more than some organisations do, but I think there's also been an issue with people accessing debt advice. So they might have left their debts go longer without actually dealing with them, so that they become harder to deal with. And people have been choosing options such as private debt advice organisations, so who offer IVAs, which may not be the best option for clients. There's a big issue with people getting advice, but not necessarily balanced advice, which we as charities would always ensure that we have no bias with what advice we give them. But there's definitely issues out there at the moment with people struggling to get advice and going for the first option, and it might not be the best option for them. And I'm really concerned about that, because I've seen people who are on debt plans now for 33 years, which that's a long time to be in debt for.
Thanks, Lucy. Please don't forget to post those links in the chat if you can. Matt has just made a comment about sharing stats. But I want to move on now to Tara. So Tara Bowers is our second panelist. She's a director at Exeter Community Energy and project manager of our Healthy Homes project, which is a free fuel poverty and energy advice service for domestic homes and is delivered in 5 districts of Devon by a dedicated team of our home energy advisors. And Tara was also named a National Heat Hero in January of 2020. She was one of 12 heroes nationally for her work supporting vulnerable clients in fuel poverty. Tara, take it away.
Thank you. So I've just got a few slides, which I'm just going to find and share. Where's it gone? There it is. So I've taken out my slide about statistics because Lucy's already done that for me. So yeah, I run our Healthy Homes for Wellbeing project, which is all about helping vulnerable people. So every day we are dealing with inequalities in the energy sector. So I'm just going to go through a few different things that we see that Lucy didn't mention. So I'm just going to come back to some of the factors contributing to fuel poverty. So low incomes, definitely a big factor in Devon. We've got also high housing costs. There's a lot of private rental houses, as Lucy alluded to, and high rents, as a result, high rents in relation to the low incomes, which obviously puts pressure on disposable income. We've got rising energy prices. We've got a lot of hard to heat homes, a lot of old housing stock, and coupled with that is a lot of inadequate heating in those older homes, and poor insulation and poor ventilation. So all of those factors contribute to fuel poverty, as well as all of the individual personal factors that Lucy mentioned now. So I'm just going to go through a few of these key areas and highlight some of the inequalities we see in our fuel poverty work. I summarise, generally speaking, that we see the poorest people living in the least energy efficient homes, and they're the ones that end up paying the most for their energy, and that seems grossly unfair to us. And as Lucy alluded to, a lot of that is to do with the rental home market. So 19.4% of rental homes are in fuel poverty, private rent, compared to only 7.7% of homeowners, and that's a huge difference. There's a gross inequality around upgrading these homes. So if you're a homeowner, you make that choice. You have that choice to upgrade your home, whichever way you decide to do it. But if you're in private rent, you have to rely on your landlord to do that for you. And under the ME standards, the minimum energy efficiency standards, landlords must spend up to £3,500 bringing their homes up to an EPC band E. But if the costs are higher than that, then they're exempt from doing the work. And even if they do the work, in our opinion, an EPC E is still a cold home if you don't have the money coming in to heat it. So we see across our sector a gross inequality in terms of people in private rented homes living in these really hard to heat homes, and they just simply don't have the money to turn the heating on in the winter. We often find that these homes also are older properties and often larger homes that have been split into apartments or flats, or maybe they're larger homes with shared occupancy. most of you will know that a lot of the towns in Devon, we've got a lot of Victorian housing, solid walls. You know, there's just no way of improving those homes easily. And with all of the other factors we've mentioned, with energy prices going up, it just means that people in those homes end up paying far more for their energy than they would otherwise be doing so. So EPC's energy performance certificates, I just thought I'd mention this, as I think this is quite important, that according to government statistics, only 6% of the public know what their energy rating is for their property when questioned. And apparently 42% have never heard of EPC. Now, I can believe that. Everybody that buys a house or rents a house should be given their EPC certificate for their property. But the number of homes we go to, and people contact us after they've been living there just a few months and are astonished at how high their bills are or how cold the house is. And we say to them, well, you know, what's your EPC rating? And then normally they don't know what we're talking about, but eventually we find it with them and it's an E. And we say, well, no wonder you're cold. You're living in an E-rated home and you're only getting £70 a week in benefits. You know, you're never going to be able to afford to pay the fuel bills for an E-rated home. So, you know, I think there's a lot of work to be done around educating people on what EPCs are and what they mean. And I think there needs to be some work done around explaining to tenants, particularly, the impact of renting an E-rated property, even a D-rated property. You know, it's still expensive to heat a D-rated property. So that's one big inequality for me, that, you know, those that perhaps are not so savvy about this topic are disadvantaged because they're not knowledgeable enough to understand what the EPCs mean. Lucy mentioned off-gas grid. Yeah, this is a big one for us too. We work across mid-Devon, which was the area Lucy highlighted on her slide. So, you know, those that are off gas grid are disadvantaged because gas is the cheapest fuel for heating currently, mains gas. And therefore those living in the rural areas have got to heat their home with a more expensive fuel, either oil or LPG or electric, unless they're fortunate enough to have plenty of money and have installed solar panels or other renewable energies on their property to make it cheaper for them. And we also find, obviously, that those living in those rural areas are often on lower paid jobs like agriculture or care or hospitality and tourism. So the two coupled together is what forces these higher fuel poverty rates. And we see a big inequality in the grants and funding as well. So there are a number of grants and funding available to vulnerable and low income households. But the inequality lies in that the amount of money available often depends on where you live. There isn't a standard amount of local authority money across Devon. All of the districts offer different criteria. So some districts have a higher threshold of eligibility than others. And the amount that's offered in some districts to the residents is different. So we would like to see a more level playing field in that area. I covered it on our Fuel Poverty Awareness Day webinar last November, and I know there's a couple of people on this webinar today that attended that one, so you're hearing me harp on about the same thing. I apologise, but it's really important for us that we could have somebody in Exeter and somebody in Mid-Devon wanting the same measure, the same replacement boiler, for example, and they'll be on the same benefits, yet they get a different level of funding because they're in two different districts, and I don't think that's very fair. The level of funding also depends on what works you need to have funded, and bizarrely there seems to be more funding available if you want to install gas central heating than if you wanted to install something that's electric or renewable. And with the government saying we need to decarbonise our heating and energy sector, I find it really strange that we're still funding new installations of gas heating, and that seems to be the better funded work. And obviously it also does depend on whether you've got savings yourself to add to any funding to bring up the, the full amount of the money, and also, your ability to borrow money. If you're on low income, you're never going to be able to borrow money to pay for any differences in the amounts that are needed. And even if you were allowed to borrow, you'd probably find it very hard to pay that back. As Lucy was saying, some people end up on payment plans for many, many years. And the other great one for us, which at Exeter Community Energy we talk about all the time across all of our projects, is the transition to net zero and what that means for vulnerable people. Who are those that are going to be left behind? Well, from my perspective, it's definitely the people we're helping on our Healthy Homes project. How are these people on low incomes or with health or mental health issues or learning disabilities going to be able to cope with our transition to a smarter energy system? They don't have the financial capability, as we've already alluded to. A lot of this new energy solutions are very technical. The people we're dealing with day to day just don't understand it, and it's going to take a lot of educational work to help them understand that. A lot of our clients just aren't digital ready. Many are not connected to the internet. They don't have smartphones. Lots and lots of the services that are being pushed on us as an energy sector are all around apps on our smartphones, and vulnerable people just aren't going to be able to cope with that. We've also got the dwelling itself, as I've mentioned. EPCs play a big part in that. And how are we going to turn a thatched cob cottage in the middle of mid-Devon into a net zero home of the future? Solar panels on a thatched roof. So there's lots of issues around the people that are living in these hard to heat and high fuel properties. And lastly, I added on values, which kind of also takes in people's individual circumstances. So a lot of people that are vulnerable and on low incomes won't be risk takers. They won't want to be adopting new technologies. They possibly also might not be engaging in the whole climate change arena. And maybe they've got other priorities. Doing their bit for the planet is going to be way down their priority list. Just managing their day-to-day affairs and managing their health problems is probably going to be at the top of their list. So we have great fears that there's going to be a greater poverty gap than we already have in years to come if we don't do something to help these vulnerable people. For those of you that don't know about our project, I just wanted to recap what we do. So we work in Exeter, Mid-Devon, East Devon, Teignbridge and Torbay, and I currently have 9 advisors now on my team, having recently recruited 3 more. And we give a free energy advice service to domestic homes. It doesn't matter whether they're in rented or homeowner situations. And we provide advice by telephone and on home visits. And we work in partnership with the national project called LEAP. And when we're allowed to do so, we'll get back to doing our drop-in clinics around the region, but we can also do energy cafes on Zoom, talks and webinars, and we do a lot of frontline worker training with key partners like councils, charities, social workers and health visitors, for example. Sorry, I keep losing my mouse. And that's just our contact details there. If you would like to get in touch after this webinar, I'd be very happy to talk to anybody further about our services, or if you have clients that you might like us to help support.
Great. Thank you, Tara. I saw a couple questions in the chat already, so I'm going to start with one from Jody. And the question is, how can we improve awareness and implication of EPCs, particularly first-time renter and elderly residents?
Does anybody else have any comments? Or I will say what I feel. Do you have any comments, Lucy, from an NEA perspective?
Still haven't got this unmute thing. I do think people don't have an awareness. I totally agree about the EPCs. My worry, particularly at the moment, is there's many people still in EPC non-compliant properties that are F and below, and they're getting housing benefit and housing element paid via the government for these properties, and yet they are F and G. And for me, I would like to see some more work being done with the landlords regarding that. What are your thoughts, Tara?
I mean, I think when tenants are given their packs, you know, when they get their rental pack, I'm sure it's not even mentioned by the estate agent or landlord, whoever's given them the pack. It's just in the pack. You know, the law says, you know, they must have one, so it goes in the pack. But unless anybody's talking to them about it or pointing out, you know, what it means, I don't know what relevance it is to anybody. You know, we try to we try to spread the word that we're available. You know, I'd very much like us to do an energy visit with someone as they take on a new home, and that's the best time for us to help them learn to understand how to use their heating, to make sure they're on the right tariffs, and, you know, tackle any issues head on straight away when they take on a tenancy, not a year or two later when they've built up a debt and they've been suffering for 2 winters in a cold home. So there's no magic answer, unfortunately. I guess it just needs more of us to be working together.
Tara, it was something that some housing associations have got energy advisors, and I've loved this idea of those energy advisors going out as soon as the sign up. And I do think that is such an important thing to do to set people up not to fail. And it's that sign up for the tenancy. Yes, make sure they can afford the rent, but yes, make sure they can afford the bills of the property. And some of the advice work I do, I'm sure you do, is also saying to clients, they've got a really poor EPC now, you're looking at other accommodation, look at the EPC and decide from that whether you'll be able to afford it. But it's that, I totally agree on that critical time, but I do think housing providers, some of them are definitely working and going in that direction, but other ones, it would be really positive if they did.
Yeah.
It's Jodie. I just wonder whether I could just comment on, in East Devon, we're setting up a property agency rating scheme. So we're working with property agents in East Devon and sort of explaining and providing advice to the agents so that they can pass on that information to the tenants. So we're trying to set up that at the moment. It's been slightly delayed because of COVID. But I think from a local government point of view, we've got a lot more messaging to do around energy efficiency and energy advisors, and it'd be great to be able to work together to try and get some messaging out to our new residents.
Definitely. Well, you know, we're here, Jodie, if you want us to, you know, team up with you on anything or talk to property agents. I'm very happy to do so.
Thank you, Tara.
Okay, it looks like Megan has a hand up, and then after that, we'll move on to.
Oh yeah, thank you. Yeah, I really do like that idea that, well, quite a few ideas that both speakers have come up with, but Tara, the idea of doing visits to new homes to advise new tenants, and that's something, because I'm East Devon District Council as well, that's something I'm sure that, you know, if you're not already doing with us and with especially with Jodie, then yeah, I think that would be really good. I think there are a lot of good ideas here, and my big question is, how do we resolve them? the million-dollar question. How do we resolve all these problems? Not easy, I know, and we all try as hard as we can, but yeah, it's really good that we've got energetic people who are working in this industry, who are trying to help people as much as they can. I really appreciate what they're doing. Thank you.
Thank you.
I guess
Okay.
that is.
Andy, did you want to go ahead?
No, I was just going. I don't know if there was an answer to that one or not. I don't
expect an easy answer, but it'd be nice if somebody had one.
So from an enforcement point of view, we don't necessarily know who our landlords are in East Devon, and so sort of using council tax data when we get new tenants moving into properties may be quite useful for finding new renters who have taken on a property, but that's a little bit complicated about how we get data to follow up EPCs information from landlords, which is why trying to go into the property agents is quite a good step. But we could look at using council tax data to find these new renters.
Yeah, thank you.
So I see there's a question from David. I do want to just make sure that Sharon has enough time, and then we can circle back, but I'll just read the question out loud so it's food for thought for people. David said, is there a way to provide indicative bill costs for generic property type and EPC band? Might not be perfect, but may help in budgeting. So if we can just keep that in mind, and then Lucy suggested a question around carbon tax as well. So those are things we'll come back to. But for now, just to make sure everyone that Sharon has as much time as Tara and Lucy did, I want to introduce her. So Sharon Church is the benefits manager at East Devon District Council. It sounds like many of you already know her. She also manages the financial resilience team, which works alongside the benefits team. And this is a team of its own setup to help residents experiencing financial hardship, as well as they work on identifying the root causes of poverty. And this led to some really interesting discussion the last time we all spoke. So yeah, looking forward to hearing what Sharon has to say.
Hi, everybody. Andy, I think you're going to present for me. Lovely, thank you. So what I want to do first of all is just give a bit of a run through about what we're doing on the financial resilience team to help address some of the issues that around poverty in the area, and how we're working in partnership with other organisations such as ECO to help our residents. So the first slide, please. Okay, so East Devon actually has a poverty panel and a poverty strategy and working action plan in place to help address poverty in the area. And the financial resilience team was set up to help achieve some of those objectives. And our overall objective really is to help people on low incomes to maximise household income and minimise their costs, therefore building financial resilience for the future and reducing indebtedness. And so can we go to the next slide? So what we do, as well as looking at income maximisation and minimisation of expenditure, we also look to help our residents identify the underlying issues that are causing their hardship and try and help them find solutions to those. So we start by completing a full income and expenditure form, as that pretty much allows us to explore the issues that people are finding themselves in, and completing those forms really opens up the conversations. Once we've done that, then we'll look at the best way to help our residents deal with those issues, or And some of those solutions might be referring them to external agencies and organisations, charities, or even internal departments. And there can be a number of different issues that residents are experiencing, so it might need lots of different agencies to be involved. I think what we really want to make clear is we're not trying to solve everything ourselves. We're just trying to coordinate, identify and signpost to get people the right support. So we've referred residents to ECO, South West Water, Citizens Advices Devon, our housing department, and we also help people with income maximisation, especially around DWP welfare benefits. And I know that others have touched on this already. So if somebody needs help to make a claim, or we're especially seeing people that maybe have universal credit, where we've identified missing elements of those, or they've been sanctioned, we can discuss those cases directly with the DWP, especially when they're vulnerable and they struggle to do it themselves. So we've managed to actually help quite a few people out in that way. So the next slide. Okay, so since we set up the team, we've had approximately about 160 cases referred through to us. They've come from internal departments, people requesting help directly from our hardship fund, schools, food banks and social workers, housing associations. And what we've started to capture the data, which we are still working on analysing that. But from really early results, can see that the highest number of referrals coming in have been from due to rent arrears. But the underlying issue for most of those people is because of financial issues rather than health conditions or the housing that they're in. And those financial reasons are covering anything from not receiving full benefit entitlements to change in income, especially over the last year with lockdown and furloughs, people, or even people just losing their jobs. And we've also, the highest number of referrals have come from single parents and just single people living on their own. So our out of the referrals we've completed work on, and we're still working on quite a few of those referrals, as 69 of them have received additional financial support out of one of our discretionary funds. So if we can go to the next slide. Right. So the discretionary funds we use are the Discretionary Housing Payment Fund to help with housing costs if someone's in receipt of housing benefit or universal credit housing costs. We've got our Exceptional Hardship Fund for help with council tax, and we've also got access to our COVID Hardship Fund, which we can use for things such as food and fuel, amongst other things. But since our COVID Hardship Fund started in May 2020, I think we've made 122 awards for fuel support. And over half of those were also awarded a payment for help to buy food as well. And as you can see, just the fuel support has cost, as we've spent £8,626 on between the 12th of May and the 3rd of June this year. And so all of our referrals, we've pretty much seen cases when they've come in have had high fuel costs, and residents, they're paying high costs, things that have already been mentioned here. They've got storage heaters, so they're not, they've got prepayment meters, which are costing a lot. Other people just aren't aware how to access cheaper tariffs or know how they can reduce their fuel costs in their homes. So us being able to refer those into eco, that makes a big difference to household budgets. And could we go to the next slide? So when we identify anyone who could benefit from a referral to eco, we send it via the environmental health private sector leasing team. And that also allows for any issues that might arise out of those conversations being able to be dealt with further if needed. So private sector leasing, they can write to the landlord of the property if works are needed to bring the property up to the required standards. And they'll also refer our council tenant properties back into our housing repairs team if needed. And again, as already picked up, that's linking in to the poverty as those residents on low incomes. They are usually the ones that are ending up living in those properties because they're cheaper. And they're suffering from perhaps damp or mold, and again that's driving up, we're seeing that that's driving up those higher energy costs to keep the properties warm, especially over the winter months. And next slide. So since April 21, when we started making our referrals over to eco, we've referred 51 cases over, and they so far have managed to find some total energy savings for residents individually between £20 to £600. Those savings obviously help reduce weekly expenditure for residents, which makes a big difference to household budgets, especially for single people. Some of those who aren't working because they, not because they're sick, but because they've lost their jobs, they've only got a weekly income of universal credit of £94, which equates to £411 a month. As from some of the data we've gathered already, we can see that those fuel costs for that group of people are around 16 to 19% of their monthly income. And the private tenants in that single group, all of them had to use their universal credit to top up their rent shortfall because universal credit wasn't covering it due to the LHA rates. So once they paid their fuel costs, they were left on average with about £273 for all their other expenses, including council tax shortfalls, TV licenses, their phones and the internet data, and food. And one person we came across was only left with £186 just after paying their rent shortfall and their fuel costs. And they weren't in a particularly high rent for the East Devon area. So we're seeing people, single people especially, just don't have enough money left for food. So any savings eco can help find. They make a difference, especially when we add in all the other referrals that we'll do as well. And the next slide. So from everything we've collected so far, we know that our residents, they have more to deal with than just fuel poverty. If they're struggling to afford fuel, they're going to be struggling to afford other essentials like food or water. And they're going to be accessing support such as food banks or asking for shopping vouchers just so that they can eat. So as well as maximising income and minimising costs, we're also really working on collecting our data for analysis, and we're trying to put that into a poverty dashboard. So that hopefully is going to help us understand those underlying issues on a much wider scale to help inform future strategies and where we need to target our support going forward. Where we are seeing recurring issues such as single people struggling, those are the sorts of things that will be feeding back into our poverty panel for further consideration and discussion on how they can be taken forward. And what we know, obviously we don't know everything, so we need to be able to address poverty going forward. We're going to need to use the expertise across all the sectors so that we can get our residents the right help and support. So hopefully that kind of explains what we're doing. I don't know if anyone's got any questions. So I'm being blinded by the sun on one side.
I just want to say we're really impressed, Sharon, at ECO by East Devon's approach to this. I think you're really flying the flag for poverty in Devon, and I hope more councils follow suit, because I think you're proving that it's a model that will work for residents, this kind of multi-agency approach, and your dedication as a council team. So well done to you all.
Great, thank you. Yeah, we hope to be able to work with everybody really, and certainly some of the things from tonight that have come out, I've written a few things down, especially I had a chat with our housing team last week about following a conversation with the Housing Association about pre-tenancy sign-ups, and that's something they're interested in doing. So we'll try and link that in with what Jodie's team are doing as well, so it all kind of links together as much as possible.
Thank you, Sharon. Additional questions or comments about any of the things that Sharon touched on? And just to say that it is 4 minutes until our end time, but if folks are happy to stick around for an additional, few minutes, that, we can go back to the other questions that came up as well. So.
I can share some information from Mid Devon. I've been on 2 Wellbeing Alliance meetings in Mid Devon in the last week, and in Mid Devon they've been carrying out a food project looking at food poverty in that area, and similar findings really, that they're finding that nearly everybody that's got food poverty has also got fuel poverty. That maybe we need to stop splitting out into these different phrases, and it's just poverty. We just need to tackle the poverty.
Thanks, Tara. Other direct questions, comments?
So Lucy raised the issue of carbon tax earlier, and I guess I'm curious what she's referring to, because to some extent there is a carbon tax on the generation end, the carbon price floor or whatever it's called. So I was wondering what you were referring to, Lucy.
I think I'm concerned as an energy advisor that there's been a lot of funding for first-time gas central heating, and the NEA I know are concerned that a lot of that may have an impact on that. At the moment, if you're getting gas, if you've got gas central heating, you're less likely to be fuel poor because it's cheaper to run. However, if you're taxed heavily from having a fossil fuel based system, are the people that we're helping to get first time gas central heating have issues in the future? And it is a concern I have had as an energy advisor, and I was thinking, as Tara was talking about first time gas central heating, what are your thoughts, Tara?
Well, I mean, from my eco director perspective, I don't want us installing gas central heating, but from my fuel poverty project manager's role, I do want us installing gas central heating because it's cheaper than anything else for people. So it's a really tough one until technology catches up and prices come down for the new technology. And I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. It's very difficult. Funding, as I mentioned, funding is the issue as well. If there was more funding available for electric forms of heating, we wouldn't be having this conversation now on this topic, because I wouldn't have raised it as an issue. So I don't know. for me, there's always too many things to be done, and there isn't a simple solution.
Mm.
I mean, I think this touches on something important, which is the sometimes inaffordability of renewable energy as well, which is something we've had conversations about. And, you know, I think when you look at it from a justice perspective, which is the lens that I tend to use, you know, obviously folks that have used very little energy, which means they have, you know, not made a large contribution to the current climate situation, I don't think should then be burdened by a tax when they finally have the ability to access energy for sort of their basic level needs. We're not talking about extreme overconsumption by these users. And so certainly I think that's a policy thing that would need to be worked out to reflect that.
I think that's something that NEA are looking into at the moment. They're concerned about it, that there will be a heavier, there could well be a tax that will make it very difficult if you have a gas central heating in your home, and how that will be mitigated if people are on a low income. So it's interesting to see where we're going. But my concern, as Tara is at the moment as an energy advisor, it seems a lot easier to get support for gas central heating than it is to get other forms of renewable technology heating. Choice is not there. Would you say there's choice at the moment, Tara, if you've got a low income?
That's the problem. Yeah, that's the problem. There is no choice. And it's interesting as well, we've just been involved in one of the funded projects that was on my slide, the local authority delivery of the Green Home Grant scheme. So the voucher scheme disappeared earlier this year after a year of failure, but the local authority delivery part of that money is still going, and we've been taking part in the Devon scheme. And it was quite interesting that even on that scheme, where people will be being offered free measures, if you offered them a choice between solar panels and some new front doors, guess what they chose? New front doors.
Yeah.
And then they were saying, well, what do I want solar panels for? You know, well, I don't want those. I don't need those. What do I need those for? You know, people have not got a clue about what net zero means.
Mm.
They listen, they hear it on the news, they read it in the newspapers, but the man on the street does not understand what net zero means.
Mm.
Okay, so I think there's a couple more questions. Andy, do you think you could read the one you were just asking about?
Yeah, so there's one from Matthew Axe, which he says, private renters have to meet rental affordability requirements with letting agents, but could the EPC energy costs be introduced into that calculation? I don't know whether that was what Jodie was referring to, or whether that's something different.
And while we're on that, David's question was also about EPCs again. So just a reminder, that was a question about the possibility of providing indicative build costs for generic property type and EPC bands. So I know we're kind of back on that same topic, but there seem to be a lot of questions around it. So if folks want to talk about that.
I think, oh, sorry, Tara.
No, it's okay.
There's something we see from a benefit point of view, and certainly the people that we see, a lot of people are already failing the affordability tests for properties, especially for people who are at risk of homelessness. And that's a test we look at for discretionary housing payments as well, as can people afford their properties going forward? And actually we're seeing more and more that they can't. So I don't know if adding in an EPC would actually make that worse, because they can't even afford the rent based on their income at the moment. So what impact that would have, I think.
does that mean that the benefits levels need to rise? You know, if people aren't able to meet their basic needs, you know, everyone has a right to their basic needs, and if benefits aren't covering those levels of basic needs, isn't that a societal problem that we have?
Yeah, quite possibly, and that, and I think that's where we'd like to kind of work together to understand that, really, because that could be something that we do feed back up to the panel, perhaps with NEA, if there's some lobbying there to be done. That's something that could be a joint approach across the sector, rather than just one organisation trying to say it. It might have more of an impact, perhaps.
It does seem rather unfair that someone could be in a property that's a B or a C rating and gets exactly the same income as somebody who's on a D or E property, and their overheads are substantially higher, particularly in an E property with standard electric heating, with somebody who might be in a very efficient property, and both of them are getting the same amount going in, but one might be having a lot more going out. But I'm not sure what the answers are, but perhaps the work that you're doing will help towards that. Tara, is it what solution could there be, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I mean, that is where the poverty gap is, isn't it? You know, that if particularly on the benefit side, if everyone's getting the same benefit, but the same, you know, if rents are higher in a certain area, or like you say, then the fuel costs are higher, that's the inequity. Yeah, I don't know.
I think the change in the fuel poverty definition, it will be very interesting, and I think EPCs are just becoming increasingly important in energy advice, and I wonder sometimes with rent reviews whether they should also be, EPCs should be included, particularly in housing associations, because rents should be looked at in comparison to how costly the properties are to run. If you can see what I mean, they're already high. Some not all housing association properties have good EPCs, but maybe their rent should reflect how expensive that property is to run. Does that make sense, Tara? Do you understand what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah, and then also actually sometimes the EPCs are wrong anyway, so that, you know, it should be a chance for EPCs to be redone and recalculated, especially if there's been any changes to the property in the period.
Thanks. Thank you. Sorry, I just want to cut in here because we are a bit over and I think need to wrap up, but Megan has a hand up, so I wanted to give the opportunity for a last question, comment, what have you.
Thank you. Just a very quick one, just about the campaign, the lobbying and so on. And I'm a councillor. I'm an East Devon District councillor, so I can lobby sort of politically, and I would be more than happy to have any discussions with anybody, with Tara or anybody who knows of any campaigns that are going that I can add my voice to, and I can add the voice of our administration at East Devon District Council to try and change some of whatever needs to be changed at government level. And easier said than done, I know, but I'm happy to join in anything and add our voice to that regarding the inequality and so on. But I just wanted to double check as well what I said earlier about, would Tara and Sharon be willing to send on their presentations to us? I just wanted to check that. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
I'm happy to send that.
Okay, thanks, Sharon. Yeah.
What I'll do is put them all in a folder on Dropbox that people can access, and I'll send an email tomorrow to follow up. And so you should get it tomorrow. Should get them all tomorrow if everybody's happy with that.
Yeah, lovely. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much, Megan. That was great, and it was something we haven't gotten to that I wanted to, that I posed to the panelists, was questions about how people might be able to get involved or how services could be better integrated moving forward. And I know we're basically out of time, but if anybody wants to say a couple of words about that, feel free. Otherwise, to be continued, I suppose.
It's been very interesting. Thank you. It's been very interesting.
I've just shared the indices of deprivation. That was from 2019. It might help also to relate that to the stats. So it's the Google link there on the comments page. Anyway, it doesn't say what it is. It's drive.google.com file. It's actually the link that's from the County Council website, but it might be worth having a look at in relation to Exeter.
Thanks. Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, thanks again, everyone, for being here, and to the panelists. I thought that this was really, really informative, and I look forward to seeing the sort of connections and work that go forward from bringing all of you folks together. So thanks again, and be on the lookout for the slides and the recording of this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.